Never did I imagine that I would be one out of 1.8 million people living worldwide with multiple sclerosis. Never did I think that one day I would be standing on a stage, bearing it all, sharing the good, sharing the bad, sharing the ugly, sharing the mess. Vulnerability is really, really intimidating. It takes courage, thick skin. It's giving yourself permission to show up in your most authentic form, and it is certainly not easy. It's putting yourself in a position where you're able to share the most painful things about yourself. But if you are brave enough and willing to share, maybe your testimony will wind up being someone else's survival guide. My name is Brittany Quiros, better known to the multiple sclerosis and disability communities as a hot MS, like a hot mess. Get it? And trust me, that is not just a witty play on words. I am your friendly neighborhood dumpster fire, a complete train wreck, a complete hot mess, and I would not have it any other way, truly. I am so grateful to have the privilege to show up as a full-time multiple sclerosis advocate, motivational speaker, recording artist, writer, and weird human on the internet bragging about her disasters and making videos about bladder incontinence. And I never thought that life could mean so much. I was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis in September of 2019, and never did I imagine that my new reality would be the catalyst of a journey so full of strength, community, friendship, love, and actually purpose. And never did I dream that a prayer that I had prayed for years for a greater purpose would be answered through what most would be considering to be a complete and utter disaster. But it has been the biggest blessing. And it's hard to say, how could a blessing consist of an incurable progressive disease? We'll never say never, because here we are. Now, before some of you get up and start running towards your nearest exit thinking, well, who let the crazy lady with tattoos on her face up on the stage that's clearly in denial of multiple sclerosis? Let me reassure you, I may be 50 shades of artistic expression, and I might just even look like your favorite rapper, okay? But I am not crazy. I have just walked a road in 35 years that some don't walk in a lifetime. And God has taught me how to take the things in life that were handcrafted and designed to destroy me, and has given me the tools to allow my messes to actually transform me. And I'm here tonight to hopefully guide some of you to do the same. When you change your perception, you change your reality. Think about that for a second. When you change your perception, you change your reality. Now that sounds like a tall order. And some of you may be thinking, Britt, how on earth can I view the thing that may one day end my life as a blessing without thinking I'm completely crazy? But gratitude makes optimism sustainable. So we have to start looking at life through an alternative lens, a lens coated with gratitude instead of fear, because fear only fuels insecurity. And fear is always, always going to prevent us from unveiling what God has planned from us. And MS, for those living in the room, we know MS comes with so much fear. So how do we find gratitude in pain? How do we find gratitude in uncertainty? Because the alternative means that multiple sclerosis won. And I don't know about you, but I would rather be the victor than the victim. MS holds power, it does, but we all hold something greater: faith. You have multiple sclerosis. 4 words that we never thought that we would hear. We never saw ourselves walking a road so unevenly paved, and never thought that one day that we would live in bodies that we have very, very little control over. But something happened in our lives to change the trajectory of where we would end up. And we certainly never thought that we would be here tonight celebrating and empowering and honoring those living with multiple sclerosis. Let's give everybody in this room a hand. Maybe you're here because a loved one has MS. Maybe God has called you to make an impact in life and somehow your road led you to multiple sclerosis, or maybe you are a brother and sister in MS like me. Whatever the reason, I am absolutely so grateful that you're here tonight, and I am so grateful to be here tonight for DMF's Little Black Dress and Tie 2024 Gala. Let's give a huge round of applause to Shelly, I don't know where you are, and Paula, and the whole crew for putting on such an amazing event. Every single person in this room tonight has been faced with challenges, some more than others, challenges that were devastatingly painful and soul-crushing. And we've asked ourselves, why is this happening? How am I going to get through this? How much more can my body withstand? But worry is worship to the enemy. So when you catch yourself spiraling with questions, overwhelmed with fear, remind yourself, you're still here. You're still breathing. And you're still fighting. And you are not alone. Because we have all been knocked down so many times in our life. And just when we pick ourselves up again, we no sooner hit the pavement all over again. It's life. It gets messy. It's relentless, unpredictable, and sometimes it's really unfair. But I know through experience that obstacles actually create opportunity, and the mess is always there to teach you something if you widen your perception. Change the way you look at the mess. Nobody instinctually welcomes disaster. You know, we're not ushering in the chaos like, come here, come on, sit down, please, wreak havoc on my life. We're not doing that. But when chaos strikes, we have to be skilled enough to navigate through it. And disaster isn't something that we typically have respect for, but we should. But we're not taught this. Many of us are taught to simply shelter in place until the storm passes. Stay low to the ground, you'll be okay. But we get one life. One. And I think we can all agree that it's very quick, and we get no redos. And I don't know about you, but the next time a storm comes, I would rather walk right through it. You have the power to be bigger than the storm. God didn't remove the Red Sea, we know that, but he parted it. So God will always get some kind of navigation in front of you to be able to squirrel your way around the mess and around the disaster. Faith is a funny thing sometimes. It's really, really hard to have faith when you feel like everything is falling apart. But I have watched God work in my life. And even when I thought that I was alone, I now know that the teacher is always silent during a test. And we do not grow when we're comfortable. It's actually the complete opposite. We experience the most growth during the most painful and uncomfortable parts. And let's face it, MS loves to make us uncomfortable. MS does not care about our plans. It doesn't care about our feelings. MS doesn't care about how much damage is left in its wake. MS is going to do what MS is going to do, and it does it. But we have a choice to decide what to do with our mess. We have the ability to just take it in and embrace the suck and use the pain as fuel, as a reminder of our strength. People come up to me all the time and they say, Britt, gosh, I wish I was as strong as you are. And every single time I respond the exact same way. You are. Sometimes you just have to dig it out. And it is in you, dying to get out. What you speak into your life holds weight. So be careful how you speak to yourself. What you speak into your life becomes a reality. I grew up in the performing arts. Music is etched into my bones and runs right through my blood. And I inherited this passion from my beautifully talented mother, Kristen, who is here tonight. And as a little one, I remember she would play and she would practice the piano, and I spent hours in the baby chair while she was rehearsing, and she would be playing and pedaling with one foot and rocking me with the other. So I spent the majority of my infanthood underneath her piano, and to this day, I still love to lie underneath her piano while she plays. She's like, "What are you doing down there?" I never, ever fit in. I was a weird theater girl in a small town in Boston that was infested with athletes and sporting events. And I know that I was born to be an artist. But when I was 11 years old, I told my mom, "You know what, I kind of want to try being a normal kid for a little while. Skip the rehearsal and just want to be normal." So I joined a softball team. And after the game, I think it was the first game, I asked my mom if she could wash my costume. I belonged on a stage. I was more interested in attending conservatory classes and studying vocal performance than going to a friend's birthday party. I was hungry to grow as an artist. I performed professionally from the age of 4 on and was handed brutal criticism and auditions. And you have to have thick skin, really thick skin. But the moment I took the stage, I felt like I was home. I felt safe. Creative adversity as a kid is really tricky. It's messy. I was the kid that would get asked to sing the national anthem for school events, which turned into a green light for social sabotage. It hurt. It was painful, but little did I know that my armor was being molded and shaped. Armor that would one day cover all the scars, and I never thought that my scars would make me feel so incredibly strong. Because we often think of scars as a bad thing. We approach scars with empathy, but more often than not, with pity. And I am sorry, but there will be, in the space of MS, there will be no pity in this dojo. Don't underestimate the power behind your scars. Don't ever underestimate the power behind your scars. Years later, still performing and dreaming of one day being on Broadway, I collected a wide range of jobs to substantiate the term starving artist. I was a waitress, I was in sales, I worked as an administrative assistant, collections manager, bartender, I even cleaned houses at one point, and please laugh at this one. "Hi, my name's Brittany, and I'm calling about your car's extended auto warranty." I loved performing, but refused to lower my morals or standards to meet the needs of a very warped and dysfunctional industry. And some roles I did not get because I chose character over competition. Eventually, I found myself part of the Me Too movement from the actions of a forceful casting director. Never did I see myself there, but my armor was being molded and still shaped. I grew up with an alcoholic father and learned at the age of 3 years old that while my mother and him fought that if I climbed up her body and she was holding me, she wouldn't get hit. When I was 21, I found out that my charmingly theatrical boyfriend from years prior, back in high school, had actually taken the lives of 2 people, brutally, one of which was a friend of mine. That same year, again, I was a victim of sexual assault from someone slipping a drink slipping something into my drink at a nightclub, and let me just say that was the first and last nightclub I have ever been to. By my late 20s, I had experienced my fair share of loss and trauma. Trauma that many of us only read about in books or maybe even watch on 60 Minutes. Things were happening in my life that were horrific and really unfair. And I was too naive at the time to stand up for myself. My life was spiraling out of control. And I did not seek support during the trauma and soon began changing my appearance. Because if I looked tough, nobody could hurt me. I collected 90% of my body art within a 1.5 year period. And trust me, people get really confused when they see the heavily tattooed girls sing Broadway and opera. I knew that I was masking the emotional pain with physical pain, and it almost became an addiction. I escaped my first marriage as a victim of domestic violence and retrained my brain to function normally outside of narcissistic control. I felt frozen from the trauma, stuck, never moving forward. So I let fear take over, and I stayed put. I was a lazy Christian and definitely was not walking the path that God had set out for me. I felt jaded by trauma, and I felt broken. I had hit rock bottom, and I was desperately trying to find my self-worth that had been silenced. Now, why am I telling you this? It is not for shock factor, though some of you may be going, oh my gosh. But it's not. It is truly because MS is not the worst thing that has happened to me. And there is power in pain. You have to be able to take the pain and turn it into power. Take the tragedy, take the mess, and then go turn it into something beautiful, because you deserve to be happy against all of the odds. I was praying for something to come into my life, for God to bring a bigger purpose, something for me to impact change, and I knew that I wanted to help others and inspire them, but I had zero clue in what capacity. I hit rock bottom. But sometimes God lets you hit rock bottom so that you realize that God is the rock at the bottom. And God must have really wanted to find me, because I kept hitting rock bottom. God had to make me uncomfortable, or else I was never going to move. When God wants you to grow, He is going to break you first. So I went from thinking that I had lost it all to realizing that God just wanted me to start over. What an opportunity. What a gift. Fast forward a few years into a new marriage in September of 2019, when I got the call that I was now one of the 1.8 million people living worldwide with MS. Now, in this moment, I should have been losing it, freaking out, breathing into a paper bag, doing the, but I wasn't. And this is something that I love explaining, because it was unlike anything that I had ever experienced before. I felt peace. And God will give you a peace that sometimes makes not a lick of sense. This peace gives you the ability to sleep in the ship in the middle of a storm. This peace was God answering a prayer that I had prayed for years, and I knew that this was it. The moment I was diagnosed, God showed up the most. And the second I hung up the phone after hearing, you have multiple sclerosis, I looked up. I was actually in the hallway office of my office building at the time, and I looked up and I just laughed and I go, okay, let's do this. And I remember going home that night and telling my now husband, Johnny, I go, this is what God wants me to do. And he goes, Britt, what are you talking about? What does God want you to do? I go, I have no idea, but I know it starts with this, and God has a long history of using flawed people. 5 days later, I started a Hot Mess to widen the perception of what disability looked like and openly discussed my diagnosis in hopes of helping others faced with the same reality. I wanted to motivate those living with MS to celebrate your mess, because the good things in life get way too much attention. I wanted to create something that would bury the shame of what disability looked like and demolish the fear that clung to this diagnosis's back. I had been through far too much in such a short amount of time in my life to let multiple sclerosis break me. This was not my ending. This was my beginning. We love to celebrate the victories in life. This is something that we all do. We got the raise, she got the house, she had the baby. I'm sorry, but we found the perfect Spanx. I know I'm not the only one in the room tonight praising that. And that's all great, and of course it deserves recognition, but what about the disasters? What about the mess? I would rather hear how you were brought to your knees, you felt soulfully shattered, no hope left, completely broken, but then you pulled yourself up, got out of the pit, and you kept going. That is something worth celebrating. And I know that God pulled me out of the pit so I could go back in and get more people out. The greater the storm, the greater the assignment. The greater the storm, the greater the assignment. So if God is putting an endless supply of junk, mess, and disaster in your life right now, that means you are somebody special. If you are in the middle of a war and you keep saying to yourself, why is this happening? How am I doing this? Why is one thing after another happening? What more can go wrong? That means I am sorry, but you are somebody special. God does not call the qualified. He qualifies the called. And for the first time in my life, I felt so sure of my purpose. And trust me, people around me thought I was nuts. More nuts than normal. They kept saying, I think Britt's in denial because she's turning her diagnosis into a business. And normally I would have tried to prove myself sane and avoid someone tossing a straitjacket around me, but not this time. I was never going to prove myself to anyone else again except for God. I was finally letting him drive, because if I drove, let's just say all my extended car warranty coverage was not going to cover the damage. The victories in life are great, but it's time to celebrate the disasters. Celebrate the disasters, because those are the moments that you are actually being transformed into a stronger version of yourself. You walk slow, celebrate it. You slur your words, make a joke about it, celebrate it. You need a power chair, you better bling that baby out. You better celebrate it. You struggle with bladder incontinence? Well, I'm going to tell every single one of you right now that you are not cool unless you pee your pants. And I am cool a lot. It's time to celebrate your mess, because MS comes with so much baggage. A pile of doubt and an orange dumpster full of apologies. And I know that many of us in this room, MS or not, that we have made a habit out of saying, I'm sorry. We've apologized because we need to walk slower, for canceling plans. We've apologized because we're in the middle of a restaurant and all of a sudden we have tremors. We've even apologized for forgetting things and not being able to keep up. I don't know about you, but I will never apologize again for the things that MS controls. Life has a tendency of revealing things as puzzle pieces, and sometimes it could be impossible to see how everything fits together, because we don't see the bigger picture because we weren't trained to widen our perception. We never have the aha moment until the puzzle starts to reveal the final result. Then we can put all the pieces together and we get it. Now I know that everything that I had been through all meant something. Performing gave me confidence. Administrative skills helped me start a business in the space of MS advocacy. Writing gave me communication skills. Auditions gave me thick skin. Abuse gave me boundaries. Trauma gave me armor. Everything was not for nothing. So if you feel that some things in your life have been worthless and have been for nothing, I am promising you right now, right here, tonight, they have not been. Everything is worth something. Nobody with multiple sclerosis should fight alone, and having a solid support system is key. And the same woman who instilled music into my heart and soul as a baby has been one heck of a support system. Hey, Mom. She is also, I'm so blessed that she is my music partner and co-writer for over 30 years. And since my diagnosis, we now only write, perform, and produce original music to motivate and inspire those living with multiple sclerosis, chronic illness, and disability. We named our band 828 because we know that all things work for good, for those that love God and for those that are called according to his purpose. And we are so honored to be able to share the first single of our upcoming record with you tonight. All proceeds of this song and single, Never Have My Soul, go right back to the National MS Society, including band merch. Multiple sclerosis loves to cloud our judgment and make us question everything that we thought we knew. But mindset is everything. And gratitude can make optimism stick. Intrepidity is defined as resolute courageousness, and I love this word so much. A quality of spirit that enables you to face danger without showing fear. So the next time you are in fear, laugh at it. Laugh at it first, and then you walk straight through that storm. Because maybe God is using the storm in your life to prepare you for the blessing that is coming. Your story may be completely different from mine. Maybe MS didn't give you purpose, and that's okay. But everybody in this room has the power to change their perception, use their pain and obstacles as springboards for growth and strength. And I know every single person in this room is stronger because of multiple sclerosis. Maybe you feel called towards something bigger in life, but you keep getting faced with challenge after challenge, and you feel like giving up. Don't you dare give up. Don't give up. Never stop trying, and don't you dare ever look behind you. If the enemy keeps attacking you, you have to ask yourself this: what is in you that is so great, so intimidating, so powerful that the enemy has identified you as a threat? Because thieves do not break into empty houses. MS is not easy. We have taught ourselves to navigate around numb limbs, faulty bladders, and cognitive dysfunction that is so bad that we couldn't buy a noun if we had $1 million. We are hot messes, and the days of that being a bad thing is over. So celebrate your mess. Celebrate the imperfections. Celebrate the scars. I am just at the point in my life where I don't have space for shame anymore, and I want to encourage each and every one of you to do the same. Bladder dysfunction is legit, and let's get real here for a second. We cannot always trust a sneeze. We need to learn how to laugh at ourselves. MS is hard, but what if we changed the narrative from this is hard to this is new? Navigating around something hard is much easier than navigating around something new is easier than navigating around something hard. You all just witnessed a lesion come into the picture and said, hello, remember me? But MS comes with so much judgment, and sometimes it comes with abuse. I'm sure many of us at one point in our lives have had horrible things said to us. Maybe we were mocked from using a mobility aid, or we were judged from using a mobility aid, or felt ashamed to use a mobility aid. And I want to tell you tonight that if you do use a mobility aid, take a look at that thing for a second. That mobility aid is your power. That mobility aid is your strength and independence, and that thing means that you are still moving. That is something to celebrate. Never did we imagine that we would experience physical pain on a daily basis, but we kept moving. Never did we dream that we would one day have trouble walking, or as I like to call it, having extra swag in our step. But we kept moving. Never did we think that we would spend a day getting an infusion for an incurable progressive illness, but we did it. Never did we think that we would be getting fitted for a wheelchair one day, yet here we roll. Never did we think that we would fall face first in the middle of a restaurant from a loss of balance, but we got back up. Never did we think that we needed to turn our life into a giant sticky note, because if we do not write it down, we will not remember it. Never did we think that we would find such support in community, yet our numbers, they are great. Never did we think or imagine that we would cultivate such beautiful friendships from this disease, yet here they bloom. Never did we think that we would fight for something that we believed in so much because we had no other choice. And never did we think that we would one day be a part of a movement of warriors pushing to one day find a cure and end multiple sclerosis. Do not be afraid to walk through the storm. Let it rattle you. Let it shape you. Let it break you. Then let it transform you. Because the same storm that God sent to break you is going to be the same storm that He uses to make you. Please take a moment to raise your glass. And if mobility prevents you from doing so, then raise an eyebrow. The next time MS brings you to your knees, or a challenge brings you to your knees, I want you to think of the following. MS, you can have my body, but you will never have my soul. Thank you.